Faculty of Fisher, and have a lot of interesting things to report about that. You can even walk over later and see our work on the walls. So have we got almost everyone in? Come on in and take a seat. Yeah. So I know there are some people from out of town today, and before we start losing them to their train schedules, some people have long trips back home. Just want to do our little annual survey of the distances that people have traveled to be here. So, so could I ask everyone to stand up?
Okay.
Okay. And now, I'd like you to sit down if you're from Munich. Okay. I'm officially sitting down too. Okay. 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 Could you now sit down if you're from somewhere in Bavaria? Okay. 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 We lost a few on that one. Okay. Could you now sit down if you're from somewhere in Germany? Aha, now it's getting interesting. Okay. Could you sit down if you're from somewhere in the European Union? Did we lose? Oh, no, we lost everybody. Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, you last group, you stand up again, and we would just want to hear where you're from. So could you tell us where you're from?
Yeah. Austria.
Austria. Ah, okay. All right, Lucas. Ah, cool. Ah, wonderful. Ah, super, the Prague contingent. Ah. Yay, Poland. Romania. Oh, cool. And so I think does our participant from Romania win the farthest contest? I think, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, Poland. Ah, okay. Okay. But I'm not sure now. I think Romania is further away, right? Depends on where you're starting from. Oh, okay. Yeah, we have to, yeah. Okay, all right. Well, thanks so much. I know you fellows have to leave. Frank and Michael have to catch the train back home, and so thanks for staying, and thanks for being a part of the program today. Thanks for your sponsorship, too. Yeah. Danke. Bye-bye. Dankeschön. Okay, so now we'll get to our next speaker here, another regular at the Sitmuk festivities here. It's our good friend Martin Fischer. Martin is an ABAP developer and architect who's contributing great work at Bridging IT in Stuttgart, so not so far from here. He's a SAP mentor newbie. Yeah? What number are you? Turn around so we can see. 280. Oh, 280. Wow. You'll never catch up to Gregor at number 2.
Number 2, no. Already taken.
And obviously Martin is passionate and crazy about the community since 2013 when you started? Is that when you became
No, I started
mentor?
with the Inside Tracks in 2013, and okay. Munich was my very first one I attended, and therefore it's always an event I don't want to miss since then. I didn't miss any since then.
Cool. That's really cool. And we also invite you to tweet about Martin. He has a very charming Twitter handle @cyclingfish. You know the old joke of fish without a bicycle. Yeah. So thank you, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. I'm not going to talk about cycling today, but I'm going to talk about ABAP development and about the BOP framework. So we already know there are a lot of ABAP developers here today, as Peter already found out in his survey this morning. So now my question goes to all of you. Who knows BOP already? Okay. Who already used it in projects? Okay. so not that many. I think that proves that I think my topic might be interesting. Okay, yeah. Who of you heard that BOP is an essential part of the S4 development program model? Okay, and who of you knows that it's in the system since years? Okay, so not that much news for you in this case, but yeah, that gives me an impression how I will go through the different topics of my talk. So let's have a quick look on the agenda. First of all, I want to have a quick look on the SAP Fiori programming model, how it looks like. I want to explain the principle of one. Then I want to talk quickly about the roots of BOP. Then I want to have a look on the BOP artifacts. And last but not least, I want to give you an idea how to start, even if you are not on working with S4. So that leads to my next question. Who has already access to an S4 system? Okay, many of them. Okay, so the Fiori and ABAP development, actually SAP calls it now the Fiori development model. I like the S4 programming model a bit more because I think Fiori, at least from my point of view, which is a more developer-related view and not a marketing guy point of view, it's more about the S4 programming model because Fiori is for me actually a user experience concept, and it relates more to UI5, but not only. So already complicated enough. I don't think that you should mix it up with the whole architecture of the S4 programming stack. So who of you would call yourself S4 full stack developer, meaning from the Fiori UI to the backend implementation? Okay, already a few, so you are ahead of me. I wouldn't call myself that one because I'm missing the UI5 part in a way. So yeah, with Fiori elements and that smart templates stuff, it's getting easier with less coding effort. But yeah, still I'm improving my JavaScript skills. I'm not there where I want to be there, but that's not part of that talk. So I want to focus on the very, on the lowest layer on that slide, on the business object processing framework, also called BOP. It's there since years. It's in the system, and yeah, we will have a look later on how it looks like, and how also the way you develop with BOP changes. Okay, so how did SAP development look like, custom development look like in the past? So there were many tools and frameworks which no developer knew all. So there were, in CRM, there were completely different frameworks than for the rest of the business suite, and all that stuff. There were different UI frameworks for even different technologies, and it was all complicated. And just in my current project, I have the feeling I'm completely mixed up in my head because there are so many stuff I never heard around, which makes it quite hard to find the right one. So SAP changes that with the S4 programming model, and we are now talking about the principle of one. So there's only one tool or framework for one specific task you have, or for one specific layer. So we're starting from the UI. The recommended UI technology is JavaScript with sub UI5 and the Fiori smart elements. Going to the backend layer, we've got OData services. We can also call them gateway services, but I think the gateway tooling, or no, it's not I think, it's the case, the gateway tooling as we knew it from its appearance, it's kind of not supported anymore. We are now modeling actually the whole application within the CDS views. There we are defining actually we are defining the data model of our application with all the database table beneath. Or the HANA access, we are also publishing the OData services, which are consumed by the UI5 applications or the Fiori application in the front end. And we also define the BOP model, which is, it's all in the CDS tooling also. So we will have a closer look on that one also later. So where are the roots of BOP? Actually, I already said it. It's there since more than 10 years. It's a framework which came also from the business by design development as BRF Plus. You clearly see that SAP internally had some great ideas how to make the ABAP NetWeaver stack better, and they took the chance with having a clean system with business by design. So we've got some great ideas which are moving back to the NetWeaver stack from by design, and BOP is also an example of it. So it's been in the NetWeaver stack, but kind of hidden for us as an outside customer. It was used in transportation management in the past. Some parts of supplier relationship management were implemented with BOP, and the environment, health and safety system as well, just to name a few examples. So it's already in there since long. It's well proven. It's quite stable. But it's also changing a lot with the S4 model. So I started to work with BOP in 2013 in a big implementation project at the Deutsche Bahn, one of our customers. They built a custom development application for their whole construction site logistics. And it was a very big application where the project is still running, but they are productive since 2 or 3 years now. We never had problems with the stability of the system. Sorry for that. So very, very stable framework. There were also not many use cases which we were struggling with. So for me, a much different experience to other SAP tools and frameworks or technologies which were released. One thing I really do not understand that much. It was never that much promoted from SAP. So if you have a look on the TechEd slides of the last years, last years it appeared because it's part of the S4 programming model, but there were no detailed BOP sessions. It always stopped at the point after the CDS views. So it was always said, okay, then you've defined your BOP model, and then all the other stuff is happening somewhere, and that's something I didn't like that. Therefore, I want to have a closer look on the modeling artifacts which we have in BOP. So with BOP, we are talking about business objects, and that's also, we are in the SAP community, we are used to confusing names. It has nothing to do with the product business objects or the former company with that BI focus. It's all about our real world business objects which we actually model in our system. From a development point of view, or from the approach how to develop a BOP application, for me, when I started to work with it, it really changed because I first had to think about the structure of my model. if you look at the old tooling, which is not CDS view based, which is still available in the system, you just call up the transaction BOBF, not PF, which is still confusing. But there you find the ABAP or the sub-GUI based modeling environment, or you have a look on the ADT tools for BOP. It's you start with different models where you define your structure, and then you think about different artifacts which your objects have. So I want to make an example which is just on not on the system, just on paper. So if we think about a well-known sales order object which we have in our system, we would start with that sales order. So we just name it like this. And in the past we called that header instance just header. With WOP we would call that node, that's the root node. Okay, that's our starting point. So if we think about the sales order, it's pretty clear that we also would have sales order items. So we've got a node structure in here. A sales order item would be a subnode of our root node, and there's a relation between those two nodes. We have an association with a cardinality. So actually that part will still be, or will be done now with the new tooling within the CDS view. There you just define with annotations your business model, you activate your CDS view in the end, and then this BOP artifacts are created in the system, and then you can move over to the BOP tooling where you implement it actually in your ABAP classes. So what else do you think about? So now we've got the structure, but we actually want to have some business logic in there. Otherwise, we wouldn't need a framework like BOP if we would just talk about the data structure. So we've got different artifacts for our sales order. It could be, for example, an action that we can send that sales order. There's another artifact which can be modeled within a business object, the so-called validations. Validations is actually what the name says. It's something gets validated, and I can configure when this will be done. Usually an action is something which is represented by a button, for example, on a user interface, or if we are talking about services, just an action which can be sent by a consumer. A validation should never be triggered by somebody outside of my BOP model. So those validation can be, for example, I have to check if there is a valid date for delivery, expected date for delivery. Okay, so now the validation and the action which we modeled can be configured. We have that action and we have that validation in the system already, and then we can define that the validation we modeled, that this will be triggered when somebody wants to call that action. So the framework takes care about me as a developer, I configure the point in time when I want to have that validation executed. For example, before the action send is going to be executed, and then the system takes care of that. So there is no code needed in this case. It's all about configuration when this validation will run. The last artifact which I want to talk about. We also have determinations. This is something, some logic, where I have the need to get some data from somewhere else, and not from the user, so the system can determine on its own the data which are needed. For example, if I have our sales order, then we have a estimated delivery date, and I maybe want to calculate our stock on that date. So this could be done by a determination. The determinations are also configured, so we also can configure when this needs to be run or needs to be executed. That's actually how it all works. And with those actually 3 artifacts, I'm building my application in the end. So one of the advantages I learned, or I felt when I was working with Bob, and what my experience was, that it makes a much clearer distinction between different business needs, and also I get a clearer structure in my whole application. Separation of concerns really happens. Of course, still you have to be you have to discuss stuff with your developers. Some tend to mix it all up, but if you have clear rules, okay, one determination determines only one piece of data, then it's much easier to have a more clear structure of my application, and I'm not building that full-blown applications as we use them from the past, or as we know them from the past. So that's one of the findings I had. So maybe you are wondering now how this looks in ABAP code, how it's all done. Actually, we are all those artifacts, so the actions, the validations, and the determinations will be implemented in separated ABAP classes. Those ABAP classes implement an interface, which is given by the framework, and which also gives me the clear structure of the methods I have to implement. So actually, most of the BOP applications you will see look quite the same in the beginning. It's a bit hard to understand the coding because it's different. It's just related to the framework. But if you know one BOP application, it's easy to understand another one. There's a clear structure in the coding. There are always the same framework methods. It's just about those artifacts you model which are different. The whole BOP framework itself works with dependency injection. So we're complaining already about JavaScript and not that strong typed languages. We are also talking about generic typed interfaces there, so that makes it sometimes a bit harder in the beginning to understand the short dumps you will get, because at design time some stuff cannot be checked. But so for my experience, that's in the beginning, it's sometimes hard to find out what actually happened, but with time you get used to that one. Okay, yeah, if I got it right, I've got 5 more minutes, something like that. Okay. So are there any questions so far to how that modeling takes part, or does look like? Actually, nowadays, as I said, the definition of the structure takes place in the CDS view, and all the implementation and the actual BOP configuration is still done in the ABAP development tools BOP tools, and the actual implementation of the business logic is done in usual ABAP classes, which you know hopefully since years. It's pretty clear that there is no way to program not object orientated. So if there are developers out there who are not used to that yet, which is still the case, I know that, that's definitely something you finally, or they finally have to learn. Right. Yeah, the key message from my presentation actually is that I want to stress that the BOP environment is in the ABAP system since long. You can already start and have a look on that, even if you have no access to any S4 system. SAP developers offers the download for your ABAP instance, which you can run on a virtual machine with the current 751 NetWeaver stack, where you've got not the latest anymore, because there's 752 since a couple of weeks, but almost the latest stuff. It also includes the S4 draft model, which is needed to have us to offer a soft state, which is needed because of the REST architecture of S4HANA. So if you have a look on the old times with WebDynpro or even sub-GUI based Dynpro UIs, there we always had stateful applications. With our RESTful architecture, which we have nowadays with our data services, there's a need to persist the state, because the client doesn't have that anymore, and their SAP therefore introduced the so-called draft model, which is already in the 751 NetWeaver stack, and you can have a look on that if you install that that developer version, which is offered by SAP developers. Okay. So, are there any questions? No.
Save it for the coffee.
Peter.
We're almost on time. Uh-oh, he's going to take a break.
I just want to know regarding the UI. In the old BOP, there was a possibility to generate WebDynpro UI from the model.
Yes.
So what is the way to do it with UI5?
If I got it right, UI5 smart templates or Fiori smart templates are generated on base of the CDS view and the annotations for the UI. So that's the way the UI is generated right now. But actually, I'm not the front-end expert. So if I'm wrong, please correct me.
If it's okay, I think we'll end it here, because we have our coffee and dessert buffet coming up, and so there's lots of time to ask Martin any follow-up questions directly and go deeply into it over a nice piece of chocolate cake or something like that. But before we do that, we want to do something for our health and wellness here. So thank you, Martin. Thank you. I could also mention from one of our sponsors here, one who's near and dear to my heart, Jörg. There are nice wall calendars from Inspiricon on the table out there. You're welcome to take one with you today. And then also, please don't forget to take a heart from Progressive for their sponsorship. And now we'll have another nice business yoga session with Brigitte before we go into the break. So please help yourselves to coffee and the cake buffet provided by many volunteers here among us. And don't forget to compliment your neighbor on how delicious it is. You never know who made it. And we'll meet back in here in 15 minutes, and then we'll still be on time.
Test, test, test.
So could we get everyone back into the arena, please? We're ready to start again. Philip, maybe I can shorten your...
Yes, just, I mean, saying my name and the topic is, I think, sufficient.
Okay, great. That was more time for the presentation.
Right.
Oh, okay, sounds good. So let's get everyone back in and settled. You can bring your coffee and your cakes with you and continue to naschen here. Yeah, the Sachentort was a hit, huh? Sold out. And thank you to everyone who... wait till a few more people are back in here. You can say a collective thank you to the people who spent their evening last night baking and, and decorating and so on. Yeah, thank you to everybody. It was really delicious. Yeah, okay. All right, so make it short and sweet. The introduction doesn't have to be anything that takes away from Philip's presentation. It's Philip Legal. He's going to present Conquering the Unknown World Between Two SAP ERP Systems. Sounds very intriguing. So the stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the introduction. My name is Philip Liegel. I'm from the company Ecos.io. That's my Twitter handle. I realized that's an important thing here due to that social media wall over there. And I'll talk to you about conquering the unknown world between two SAP ERP systems. First, a few words to myself. Who am I? That's what my shell says. I'm PL, okay, not so chatty. So I prepared another document for you. I'm a full-stack developer focusing on Java and JavaScript. My background is business informatics from the Vienna University of Technology, where I worked in research and development, and that's how I somehow got into the topic of B2B communication and electronic data interchange. I was also with BMW Munich here in this city for 2 summers, and in 2012 I co-founded Ecos.io. And today I'm focusing on EDI projects, mostly in retail, industry and automotive, and where SAP ERP systems are involved. I touched Business One in the past and also Business by Design, but my main focus is SAP ERP. Okay, the journey between two SAP ERP systems can be a rough ride. Just like sailors in the past had to sail rough seas, you often sail rough seas when you do electronic data interchange. Here we have two SAP ERP systems. That's the sunshine case. Usually we have other ERP systems as well. So there are other systems out there except SAP, such as Pro Alpha, Microsoft Dynamics, and so on. Electronic data interchange is all about fully automated communication between two companies. The technology per se is there, it is working, but until it works, this is a people's business. So you reconcile a lot between those roles, and you are all well familiar with those roles. There is the project manager, he's taking care of time and budget. There is the SAP consultant who must adhere to the business blueprint, and there is the ABAP programmer constantly cursing around about changing requirements. SAP basis concerned about system setup. And this is a case, an example from the automotive industry. Then there are car manufacturers, such as the large companies in the United States and here in Germany. They move not very agile, rather like oil tankers. Then there are suppliers in Far East, in Mexico, here in Europe, which must be connected. And then on the lower left-hand side, there is the EDI service provider, which is oftentimes my role, who has to somehow bring all those guys together and try to meet the deadline. So that's one of the key challenges you often address here. But let's have a look back into the roots of electronic data interchange. Where did that all start? Then have a look at EDI in detail, and then address EDI and SAP. Well, believe it or not, but electronic data interchange has its root in the Berlin Airlift. If you look on the left-hand side, this is Germany in 1948. Just like Austria, it was divided into 4 different zones. The Western Allies on the western side, so Great Britain, France, and the United States of America, and on the eastern side, the Soviet Union. In 1948, tensions between the Western Allies and the Eastern Soviet Union started to grow, and the Soviets blocked all access, all land-based access, to the city of West Berlin. So the Western Allies started to supply the entire city using airplanes, commonly referred to as Racine bombers or Rosinenbomber in Germany, which supplied the entire city. And what were the 2 main conclusions we could draw from back then? First, it's all about the unique identification of goods. On the left-hand side, you see a care pack, which was used back then. And just think about the logistic requirement we had back then. We had 3 different languages. We had French, English, and German. And we have different measurement units, so the imperial units, pounds, stones, and so on, and the metric system. And on the right-hand side, it's a picture of the airport of Tempelhof. We had the requirement that goods movement must occur very fast. So every 30 seconds or every 60 seconds, a new airplane landed at Tempelhof, which needed to be unloaded very quickly. And they did not only supply food, but also clothes, milk, gasoline, all kind of stuff you need for a living. So the unloading process had to occur very fast. And that's why they pre-radioed in airplane 4711 is coming, which has milk loaded. So they could prepare the trucks on the ground, which could take the milk away. So the 2 main conclusions, it's all about goods identification and pre-notification of shipment arrivals. And the officer working there, he was called Edward Gilbert, who is quoted here. Information about the transported goods is as important as the goods themselves. Later on, went back to the United States and worked in e-business standardization, and was one of the fathers or the founders of a standard which is today known as ANSI ASCX12. Maybe you have heard of it, which is de facto standard running Walmart, for instance, the largest retail chain worldwide. So you see, the Berlin Airlift is basically in every bottle we're holding in our hands today. Okay, but what is electronic data interchange exactly? It's not a single technology, it's rather a concept. So it's all about exchanging structured electronic business documents between software systems of different companies with minimal human intervention. Here is a typical flow: manufacturer, supplier, sending orders and getting advanced shipping notifications back before goods are being sent. First, it's all about the necessity of a unique identification. Here, I try to write down the word screw in different languages. And maybe you know the story from the Bible here with the Tower of Babel. God gave the humans the language or languages, so they couldn't continue to build the tower. And the example here, there is a mistake actually on the slide. Can you spot it? I mean, I don't know so much about the Chinese over there, but the error is here, tire-bouchon, which is French for screw, but it's not the screw you would utilize with the screwdriver. It's the figure you would perform when jumping into the water. You see, it's a screw, also in German, a Schraube, but it's nothing to do with the screwdriver. So we need semantic unambiguity. To sum up, the 3 main requirements of electronic data interchange are unique identification of the exchanged products, unique representation of the exchanged information, and an exchange protocol which guarantees delivery of electronic documents. Let's start with the identification. Companies worldwide invest a lot of money to get those brands into your minds, into the consumer's minds. For us as IT persons, those brands are useless. What we require are unique identification. So we could step back and take, for instance, postal addresses. This is the address of our Munich subsidiary here. You as humans, you will immediately spot that this is one single address. There are maybe some small semantic deviations. And why can you spot that? Because you are humans, you have cognitive capabilities you learned in the past. You're able to infer things that are typically things machines don't do. Machines like one thing, and we had a database talk today. Machines love primary keys, okay, for unique identifications. So I'm not telling you anything new here. Great news, but so primary keys. It's awesome. We have our SAP debtors and creditors, and we'll simply take that number and take that as a unique identification. Well, guess what? Primary keys are not so good out there. Don't do that ever. One does not use a primary key in electronic data interchange because it's only unique within your company. So you will probably now say, yeah, well, thanks a lot, Captain Obvious. That's pretty sure. That's pretty clear to us all. Yes, to you maybe, but when you go out there and you consult companies in electronic data interchange, they oftentimes think that their SAP and their primary key is the unique truth, which is not, is not, of course. So the necessity of unique identification, we need to uniquely identify companies, products and services, transport units, as well as EDI addresses. Why do I show those unloading ramps here? Typically in logistics scenarios, the unique identification goes down onto the level of the unloading point, in particular in the automotive industry. So the solution is we have to use a common scheme which is maintained by a central administration body and which prevents the use of duplicate codes and guarantees global uniqueness. Therefore, we have 3 different options. First is GS1, Global Standards 1. Maybe you have heard of it. They provide global uniqueness. It's very common in retail. In fact, those barcode numbers we have on that bottle here, they are from GS1, and they provide unique identification for partners, products, pallets, etc. Actually, I envy their business model a little bit because they produce numbers and sell those numbers. And as you can imagine, number production is very expensive, just like producing aluminium, for instance. You know, it's a huge process. Second is Dun & Bradstreet. You can also use those numbers. They are for free. They provide global uniqueness, however, only on a partner level. Or, and we also find that quite often, there are bilateral agreements between companies. Certainly, there is no global uniqueness. But in the automotive industry, for instance, BMW is addressed as BMW-AG. So JLR, which is Jaguar Land Rover, uses JLR. And they just say there is no second BMW worldwide, which is true. However, if you think about intercompany communication, Dingolfing, Regensburg, Munich, and so on, then it gets complicated, but that's a different story. We use customer and supplier specific material numbers. So how is a global location number constructed? It's used for unique identification of business partners. Like I said before, you have to wire money to Cologne, where GS1 Germany is located, and they will issue a GS1 company prefix, 7 to 9 digits, and it is guaranteed to be globally unique. In addition, you may add a location reference, which, for instance, identifies subsidiary Munich, subsidiary Vienna, and so on, and the last digit is a Czech digit, and that's a resulting number then. Tired already? Well, I can see it has been a long day. Here would be a can of Red Bull, would energize yourself. In 2016, they sold 6 billion cans of that liquid, so you know where the money for Formula One and all the other fun things comes from now, and also make quite some good progress. But just imagine the logistics for 6 billion cans. You can't do that logistics based on a regular, say, natural language description. You have to use that number on the back. And that's a so-called CHITIN, also to be found on that Lebensquell here. It's called Global Trade Item Number. It's also issued by GS1. It may have 8, 12, 13, or 14 digits. Next time you buy chewing gum, look at the chewing gum. It has usually an 8-digit number. And CHITINs are based on the GLN of a company. So here, for instance, the 9 at the beginning tells me it's from Austria. If it would be 4, it would tell you it's from Germany, and so on. CHITINs are usually exchanged as part of the master data exchange process between a supplier and the customer, and networks may be used here. Maybe you have heard of GDSN, Global Data Synchronization Network, also maintained by GS1 in Cologne, which allows to do that. For instance, Edeka heavily uses such a concept. And finally, we are in logistics about the serial shipping container code, unique identification of transport units. On the left-hand side, you can see a typical sandwich palette. As you can see, every layer, there are 3 sandwich layers, has a label, and the one on the right-hand side is a so-called master label. Contents are the 18-digit SSCC number, uniquely identifying the pallet, the CHIT-IN, which is the identification of the goods contained, production date, lot number, and that scannable as well on the very bottom. And why is that so important? I mean, that's like the holy thing for the automotive industry and also for retail. That's an example for a warehouse. As you cross-docking, for instance, you can see those next to highways here in Germany a lot from Edeka, for instance. Goods constantly arrive there. And in order to allow for a consistent planning, the arrival of the goods is pre-notified using dispatch advice messages. So first, an EDI message is being sent, where the structure on the left-hand side is exactly described. So upon arrival of the goods there, the guy takes the scanning pistol, scans every pallet, and compares it with the information which has been pre-radioed in before. And in case there are any deviations, one can immediately spot under-delivery, over-delivery, wrong deliveries, and the like. Okay, so in particular for logistics, those numbers are very important. Yeah, representation. Since I'm a Java programmer, that would be my world. On the left-hand side, a product class with some private values and so on. Here, a list where I add a product. You might find the same in ABAP, in JavaScript, and so on. And you build all your nice data structures on the inside. It's all great and neat and cool, and so on. But guess what? Nobody cares out there about your internal data structures. They can be as nice as you have envisioned them. For data exchange between companies, we need to employ different concepts. So, what do we have to employ? The unambiguous representation of exchanged information is an important prerequisite, and the application-to-application communication requires a standardized exchange format, which sender and supplier understand. Here, between the sender and the recipient, we find, for instance, EDIFACT EANCOM D01 DES-ADV, which is dispatch advice, quite commonly used by Edeka, for instance, which is sent from the sender to the recipient. Typically, those ERP systems don't speak the same language. For instance, the sender could speak EANCOM, but that guy over here, he's more in the production industry. He's based on VDA 4913. So we need a converter in the middle, which translates between those message types. Yeah, data exchange formats are plenty out there. I have to admit, VDA, Verband der Deutschen Automobilindustrie, in the automotive industry, flattext formats, EDIFACT, ANSI, we already heard. If you deliver to Ford, to Walmart, and the like in the United States, UBL, Universal Business Language, an XML-based format used in PEPOL, for instance, Stradacom, old format in the retail industry in Great Britain, and of course IDOC, the XML or flattext-based in the SAP world, Zugpferd, Zentraler User Guide Forum, Elektronische Rechnung Deutschland. Sorry, I didn't came up with that. I'm just repeating what's in there, which is a PDF with an XML contained in it. Yeah, here are a few standardization organizations. They all came into play and said, we are going to introduce standards, and those standards shall help us to overcome heterogeneity. So ODET started in the automotive industry, GS1 in the retail, RosettaNet in the electronics industry, VDA, Verband der Deutschen Automobilindustrie in the automotive industry, then in the United States, ASC X12, and they all issued standards. And what did happen here? They came into play to overcome heterogeneity, and what they created is yet another heterogeneity. So there are different standards, different standard versions. UNCFACT, for instance, issues a new EDIFACT format twice a year. So there are 2 different EDIFACT versions coming out every year. So conversion, or mapping as we say it in the EDI, the translation between different formats is imperative to function and processes. So we typically have proprietary formats between the ERP system and the converter, and the common exchange format, for instance, used in the automotive industry would be VDA or EDIFACT EANCOM in retail. And the proprietary format here could, for instance, be IDOC in the SAP world. Yeah, the motivation for an EDI standard is clear, I think. If you have an integration scenario, as you can see it on the left-hand side, you will immediately see that it has quadratic growth, whereas the one on the right-hand side has linear growth. So it helps us to reduce complexity, in particular when implementing. Examples are, we heard it before, UN Edifact, ANSI ASC X12, VDA, ODET, EINCOM, CXML, you maybe heard of it when dealing with Ariba, an SAP subsidiary, OpenTrans also an XML-based format, or IDOC. However, IDOC is rather an exchange format than an Edi standard. Also wrote a blog post once about that. Yeah, Edifact example for an orders, you might see Chinese here. To me, I have to admit it's not Chinese anymore. I read it every day, and I can clearly say it's an orders. I can see a buyer there, a delivery point, a supplier, a line item, and so on. So you get used to it after some time. The thing here is the information representation is unambiguous and clear. So there is no misunderstanding between sender and receiver onto what is in the message. For us, as an EDI provider, the first line or the UNB line is the most important one. It will tell us very important meta information about the message, such as char set. Encoding is really crucial. I mean, you know that from your integration project. Ever tried to read an ISO 8851 using an UTF encoding or different? So all your umlauts and special characters will get twisted. You don't want to have that. Then here we can see that's the sender of the message, the receiver of the message, identified using GLN numbers. So you see the GLN numbers are also used for EDI identification. Then date and time of the message creation, a unique interchange ID helping you to trace a specific message, and a test indicator. If the test indicator is set, that means that the recipient must not take the message and push it forward into the production system, but it should go, in SAP terms, for instance, to the Q stage or to the D stage, but not to P. But that's usually done on the routing side. XML standards became increasingly popular by the mid and end of the 90s of the last century, in particular boosted by the .com hype. They became very popular. Distinction is there being made between markup and content. For instance, I don't know if you can really read that quite well. The red stuff is the content, all the black stuff is markup. So meta information about the content, and typically XML has a large memory footprint compared to fixed length or other formats. Please don't say it's human readable. Don't do that. Students did that quite often. It's not. It's a machine exchange format. So for me, Edifact is also human readable. So I don't let that count. Memory footprint, does it really matter? Well, for instance, let's take the following example here. Volkswagen sends a delivery forecast based on Edifact to us, for instance. We convert into an internal XML format. You can see that it explodes. It gets 10 times larger on the converter side. And if we convert it to IDOC XML, it's still 5 times larger. Please keep in mind that routing and storage do not come for free. Typically, you would say, I mean, storage, it's nowadays doesn't matter, and routing, I mean, fast internet and stuff. So who should care? But please keep in mind that you may also have to use third-party networks, which are costful. For instance, X400. Maybe you have heard of it. If you would like to talk to Edeka in Germany, you have to use X400. Guess how much 1 megabyte, I said megabyte, not gigabyte, is in X400? In euro, how much? Yeah, 15 to 20 euros per megabyte. Okay, so you wanna care about message size. Okay, typical message types in the retail industry: a supplier sends over a price catalog to the buyer, where all the goods details are specified, and then a ping-pong game starts, which usually includes orders, order changes, order responses, dispatch advices. Finally, the goods are being shipped, then receipt advices, and finally invoices. Also, if you're interested, there is a blog post I published on sap.com, or blogs.sap.com, where I also compare which IDOC types you have to use for the certain messages on the MM and SD side. In the automotive industry, the thing is a bit different. We don't use orders so much. Rather, we have so-called scheduling agreements, or Lieferpläne in German. where, for instance, here a tier 1 supplier provides to an OEM, which could be BMW, for instance. BMW constantly issues forecasts. A forecast has a validity of 52 weeks. Okay, it gets very unclear the further in the future you go. That's why you have JIT forecasts. They provide a clear forecast for the next, say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And GIS forecasts, in case you provide just in sequence. They provide a very fine-grained view. Before you ship the goods, you're supposed to send in an ASN, a holy message in the automotive industry. We will see that later. You better send the ASN or you get into big trouble. And that's why also some of the car manufacturers, in particular in the United States, will return functional acknowledgements, confirming that they have received the ASN. Then you issue the goods, and finally a receipt advice is sent back. And in the automotive industry, we don't use invoice so much. I only know about Porsche. They use invoice. All the others, Daimler, BMW, Volkswagen, and so on, they all use credit notes. So Gesverf in SAP. Yeah, routing of EDI messages in a messaging system, it's just like at the airport Frankfurt. Passengers are coming and leaving, and they try to get in and out and so on. The same applies to EDI messages. We ask every EDI message when it arrives in our messaging system, and we ask the EDI message 4 questions. Who are you? Meaning dispatch advice, orders, invoice and so on. Where do you come from? Where do you want to go? And are you a test message? And based on those 4 answers, a lookup is performed in a business firewall, and then it is determined whether the message may go on or come back. Additional questions are, what is your unique ID and when have you been created? It is very important that you provide a very precise routing here. I know about stories from Lidl, for instance, where they tested the EDI messaging system and by coincidence provided test messages to the production environment and ordered 20,000 eggs, for instance. And the recipient takes it serious. I mean, there's no telephone or anything. It arrives immediately in the SAP system, creates a purchase order, and production starts. So, and also another important thing is, which we also implement, we check for double submission. So for every message, a hash is created. The hash is stored in the message store for a certain amount of time, and in case a message with the same fingerprint arrives, it is rejected. So we really okay. But I have 45 minutes. Oh, yeah. Right. So yeah, see, he tried to steal my 15 minutes. Yeah. So let's talk about data exchange. Here is an example from IBM 360 in action at Volkswagen. One question to the audience: what's wrong with that picture? I can tell you what's wrong. That room has no windows. You see where they let the guy sit? In the cellar. No windows, no daylight. That's how they treated IT guys back then. So thank God nowadays we have windows. We can see the sun sometimes. But back then at Volkswagen, the guy had to sit in the cellar. And in case he wanted to move data out of the company, he had to use those magnetic bands. So that gives the German term Datenträger an entire different meaning, because somebody had to carry data from A to B. We don't use that anymore, of course. Data transport is using dedicated protocols. A few examples here are AS2, SFTP, FTPS. Don't use FTP, as anybody could eavesdrop. OFTP2 in the automotive industry, OFTP1, which is deprecated since ISDN will cease to exist by the end of 2018. X400, we already mentioned, can be quite costly. RESTful web services and SOAP WSDL web services we also find, however, they are rather used for crossing the last mile between a service provider and an ERP system, but not for company-to-company communication. SMTP may also be used in case the sender authenticates at the SMTP, otherwise anybody could forge a sender. And value-added networks are also quite heavily used, an old term for dedicated EDI networks, for instance, ANX, eBusiness, ENX, GNX in the automotive industry. Yeah, in the data transport environment, we usually have a 4-corner model. So the sender has a service provider and the receiver has a service provider. Service providers route among each other, and the companies communicate with the service provider using delivery and fetch. So typically you have a dedicated mailbox here from which you can fetch, and a mailbox to which you can deliver. So that's basically the principle. Yeah, rule of thumb, either be process compliant or prepare for a rough ride. Here is an example for a Mahnung, Behälterreklamation, Wareneingang, Werk for mehr, minder oder Falschlieferung, meaning there has been a deviation between the announced goods and the arrived goods, and they have to pay 150 euros. So it's one delivery. Usually in automotive we have 100 deliveries a day or 200. So that would make 30,000 euros fine per day, and all of a sudden EDI is not a necessity anymore, but top management priority. So either those processes work, or you, as a supplier to a larger one, are in big trouble. Yeah, SAP and EDI finally. On the left-hand side, that's the world you know quite well. We get iDocs out of an SAP ERP system onto the EDI service provider, and we then route Edifact, VDA, and so on to partners. The format of choice is typically intermediate document or iDoc. You get the information out of WE60. Typically, you provide the service provider with the documentation if it is maintained, or if you use vanilla iDocs. If you use set iDocs or your own customizations, you can also fetch them from WE60, and you also provide the service provider with the XML schema. Yeah, SAP and EDI, initially I said something about dragons. Yes, there are dragons. That is you on the left-hand side. Then there is the EDI converter between the SAP ERP system and the rest. And as you can see on the right-hand side, there is a multitude of different protocols which have to be supported: X400, AS2, SFTP, OFTP2, OFTP1, RESTful services, and so on, and a lot of different standards. So Volkswagen uses different ones than BMW. Ford uses entirely different ones. If you go to Asia, Hyundai, Toyota, and the like also have different ones. You have to employ different value-added networks when talking to Ford, for instance. So it's one big nightmare. And in order to overcome that nightmare, say, you typically have one managed connection to a central service provider who takes care of routing, conversion, and speaks typically all protocols and formats of the business partners. That's the approach we're currently running with SAP. We've provided the so-called ERPL add-on. ERPL is the abbreviation for ERP Exchange Language, or the German word for a mail duck. And the ERPL add-on speaks with an API on our side. So we are using HTTP post or RESTful communication to speak or to communicate between the SAP ERP system and our platform. So a little bit of technology here. How is the communication done? The customer, in this case, for instance, Daimler, issues a VDA 4905 delivery forecast. So a forecast for the next 52 weeks. We acknowledge the receipt of the OFTP message using an EERP, end-to-end response, as an acknowledgement. In OFTP2, we convert the VDA 4905 to an SAP iDoc, DEL 402 in this case. The iDoc is then stored in the mailbox on Ecosio side, and the EPO connector in this case constantly pulls from this mailbox using HTTP GET, retrieves the JSON, unpacks the iDocs, and hands them over to the function module in SAP. And after the successful creation, or in case of an error, a callback is issued to us. And the sexy thing here is that an Elasticsearch index is employed here. So you have the information about the EDI in here, and you have the information which is relevant to the key user in here, which is usually the iDoc number and the number of the Beleg, so the document in SAP. Yeah, EDI minefield. Like I said before, I mean, as long as it works, it's great, but it can also be some sort of minefield. If you want to make please don't quote me here. Typically in outbound message routing, we have to use the EDI DC40 segment in an iDoc, which provides meta information about the iDoc per se, and often the unique sender and receiver identification is missing. That's the thing. You're talking to the SAP in-house consultant, to the SAP department. They don't really care, for instance, about SND-led and RCV-led, as those are two values which are not by default filled by the SAP system. So there must be a PI in place, business connector maybe, or some other customization which fills them. Sometimes you will also find not customer or supplier specific partner profiles, but they will implement a logical system system. So they take you as the EDI service provider as a logical system, so you don't have any routing information at all here in the header. So that's sometimes quite of a discussion. Here's an example for Daimler, for instance. Daimler expects that you identify them based on the factory you're delivering to. So here we have Zentrale, GLC, Germersheim, Untertürkheim, and so on. And depending on the Werk, onto the factory you're delivering to, a different identifier must be used. So that receiver identification on a per factory basis must come from the IDOC, which is usually not the default behavior of the SAP system. So like I said before, either PI or other concepts have to be used. A word to rekey, good question. The ship to Germersheim may be 4711 in the SAP system. However, this is what Daimler wants to have, not 4711. Nobody cares about your internal key, like I said before. So somebody has to rekey. And it can either be the SAP system or it can be the document mapping on the service provider's side. However, it is a really, I mean, it's technically feasible, certainly. We just have to employ value maps here, but it's a very bad idea to rekey here on the service provider side, because you, in the SAP, you are the data owner, and you shall provide that keys. So don't rekey in the mapping on the service provider side, since this is a maintenance nightmare. I keep hearing that every time, because as you probably know, maybe the customizers on the SAP side, they're not lazy, but you know, I mean, couldn't you do that? And sure, we can, but like I said, it may become a maintenance nightmare later. So wrap up, I think I'm on time. EDI is a prerequisite for efficient inter-organizational processes. Large enterprises require them. More time for questions. SMEs must comply with the EDI requirements, however they may benefit. We've learned about EDI converters. We need them to translate. Typically, we find a four-corner model. SAP may serve as a target and source for EDI processes. In fact, it's an excellent source compared to other ERP systems. Well, I have to admit here. But EDI in SAP is not turnkey, so there's always some sort of configuration necessary. Okay, this is it. Thanks a lot for listening and for having me. In case you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me or come by and visit us for a coffee.
Thank you.
Tobias, you have a question?
Yes. When I understand this correctly, actually, a large company like Daimler would have this communication day in, day out.
Yeah.
So what actually happens, or how do you deal with the maintenance or system downtime or something like that? Because I can imagine if your system is going down for 1 hour to do maintenance.
Yeah. No, we can't.
Maybe some price tag.
Yeah. The first of all, Daimler themselves, they use SAP certainly, and they use T-Systems. That's their service provider. So there is us. We have a connection here. This one is an AS2 connection to T-Systems, and T-Systems deals then with Daimler. Daimler, of course, expects us to be up all the time. Since AS2 is used, there is a small delay in there. So we can have the AS2 has retries in it. So in case the first try fails, a second will occur and the third will occur, giving us 10 minutes of potential downtime. So this is AS2. In case other protocols are used, just as SFTP, certainly you have to be up. Here, I mean, we're now live since 5 years, and we had zero downtime. So all the infrastructure is highly redundant. It's based in Frankfurt, and we have zero downtime deployments. So deployments happen with everything is load balanced with DNS-based load balancing. So one part is ramped up, the other one is tear down, and then the new system takes over. Daimler, on the other hand side, they have to admit, is down quite often. So AS2 communication to them fails from time to time. Meaning, delivery as in AS2 we have message disposition notifications. They don't arrive. Then I have an email edi_hotline@tsystems.com. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we didn't receive message disposition notification for that and that messages. And then I will say, oh, sorry, we had I don't know what, and it's okay, we got them. Yes.
It's down all the time. You're using
No, our own infrastructure. Everything is self-developed. So the basis for the entire messaging hub was a research project at the Vienna University of Technology, and after 2 years we realized, well, actually somebody could use that. And then we had an academic approach. I mean, it was we had an entire different vision here. We wanted to prescribe a very lean format called Erpel to the outside world, but we soon realized that you can't discuss with Daimler or Edeka and say, hey, we got the cool approach we just developed at university, you want to use it? No. You'll take Edifact. So we reprogrammed a bit, and today we are actually capable of any protocol. Also, these 3 dots here are quite important because you will find new messaging systems out there. Pepboard, for instance, ever heard of it? Pan-European Public Procurement Online, which is a messaging infrastructure for e-procurement, which will be heavily used by public authorities also in Germany, which is the de facto standard in Scandinavia. Ariba is another one here, the SAP subsidiary. And the government communication, Spain has changed now, so they require you to deliver electronic messages to them. The Republic of Austria only accepts electronic invoices since the 1st of January 2014. If you deliver salad to a prison, for instance, you don't get any money unless you send XML to them. And that kind of that communication. Yeah, so EDI is, like I said before, it's really quite critical, and in case something goes wrong, they will start to search for a culprit. So those 30,000 euros I mentioned before, nobody likes to pay. So actually we can't afford any downtime, but yeah, that's what we are working on 24/7. Okay, other questions?
Yes, you mentioned at the beginning of your slide deck some providers of unique keys. Now, what's the benefit that they can provide compared to pure technical mechanism like GUID, UUID?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about looking up things. So they provide also directories where you can search for www.gpeer.de. So you can use that gpeer to search for, so I could enter a number here and it would immediately tell me this is Edeka and so on. So that's a benefit they provide, and they have lots of other GS1 identities here. So it's not only the identification of companies, but also, for instance, next time you buy bananas, for instance, you have to put them on a scale, right? And they will also print something scannable. They scan at the till. There's also a GLN, but an internal one. It starts with a 2. So
I understood it was something like providing numbers for a pallet or a shipment.
Yeah,
any kind of shipment container.
Yeah, they all interrelate. So the GLN is the basis, and based on the GLN you can create all the other numbers. So based on this one here, you can create SECCs. SECCs have 18 digits. They allow for up to, please don't nail me here, 1 billion combinations. And in case that these billions the billion is exhausted here, you restart, because this is not a permanent number. So the delivery 2 years ago, nobody's interested anymore. So it's
But these are semantic numbers.
yes, exactly. But you can. I mean, it's just an identification number. There is no way to make any conclusion to the company based on this number. So I have to use a dictionary, like Gepia. Yeah, it's. I mean, GS1 is the absolute world leader here in the identification schemes. Like I said before, it's one of the most awesome businesses you can potentially be in. I mean, there is another one I have to admit. It's recycling. People pay you to take the stuff, and people pay you for your stuff. So I'm in the wrong business actually, but that's a different story. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Philip. Very interesting discussion. Before I let Brigitte take over here, and then we have a break, could I take a quick survey on who's planning to go to KVR restaurant, Capital vom Rind? Can I count you off here? Oh, it's got to be more people. I reserved for a lot. Come on. So what do we got? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, oh, count 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Have I got you, Hendrik, to 40? Okay. I reserved for 50, so if a few more people want to come along, you'll be sure to find a seat. And we'll, if we finish on time, then we'll head over there. The reservation is for 7 p.m. So, okay, I'll turn the stage over to Brigitte for another wonderful yoga exercise. So we'll resume again at 4:45 in the arena. Thank you. So I think we're all together again here in the arena. And thank you, Mike, for putting up your graphic recording there in the hallway. We can all take some nice pictures and tweet about it. And it's really a wonderful record of today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. So I just wanted to take a minute to invite the other Inside Track organizers up front to tell about the upcoming Inside Track events. To round up Kati and Martin, are you coming up front to tell about? No? Okay. Okay, well, we've got one. Oh, no one else. Yeah, okay, she'll come and talk. Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we can start where we're waiting for the others. We're not doing only at Inside Track in Frankfurt next year, but also this month there's going to be a public community event called ABAP Code Retreat. Probably you've heard of that format as well. It's just one day of fun coding ABAP, like you all ABAP programmers here, except for one I saw on stage just now. If you're interested in that, haven't taken part in one of Damir's, one of the organizers, this time he can't make it, but Christian Durm is there and I will be there. We were going to host the day, and so if you're interested, there are still some seats open. Just ask me later or look for the ABAP Code Retreat on the SCN wiki pages and register yourself. It's a great opportunity to learn ABAP unit testing and have fun the whole day hacking. That's in Frankfurt, by the way. Yeah, I'm from Frankfurt, so besides doing that stuff, we also have an Inside Track in Frankfurt next March, early March. We haven't yet set the date, but just look at the Inside Track page on SCN. That's the best way to find it. On the sub-community, sorry. But it's still the SCN wiki.
Okay, and I stand here on behalf for the Hamburg Inside Track. We are running this format since 2012. And right now I'm looking for co-organizers. I'm the only one left, so to say, from the original team. And Thorsten has already offered his help. Stand up so that they can see you. Pardon? Yeah. We're having a lot of inside tracks, and whereas in 2012 you all came to Hamburg, and now we are all in our separate locations. So as I come here today to join you, to bring my thoughts in, I think it would be good if you could think about one inside track in a different location where you can go during the next year to bring some input or just participate and say, hey, I am from Frankfurt. Hello, Vienna, I am from Frankfurt. Hello, Hamburg, I am from Würzburg. I don't know. To get more, thought exchanges, okay? And there is a new team in Hanover. It will be at the 24th of February, definitely. They have already announced the date, and about Hamburg we will decide at the beginning of the year.
Okay, I think next upcoming Inside Track after Subtagged is Sub Inside Track in the Netherlands. And help me if there's one then in Paris on 1st of December. In Copenhagen, help me. 24th of November, okay. Yeah, plus minus. And then on 20th of January in Waldorf. And we actually don't need more organizers. I don't know why. We have a lot, but we would also need sponsors. This is still a community event, although it's going to happen in the mothership, but it's still organized by the community. I'm just the mother taking a little bit care so that they get enough to eat and so on. And we will have on Friday the 19th, what is it, January, Friday, a Learn, Hack and Play Day with a lot of IoT gadgets. It's like a bar camp. So you come there, even if you're not a techie, I think we have only techies here, but even if you would like to bring your partner, your business partner, your partner in life, your spouse, feel free to bring, because they can also participate. We will have sketching sessions, we will have soft skill sessions. So there's something for everybody at the event. And on Saturday, the Sub Inside track, we will also host the SIT Kids. So we will have a Sub Inside track for kids, our future. So we try to teach them ABAP. No? Oh, that was a Scratch. And they will also play with the same gadgets that the adults used on Friday, which is quite interesting, right? So they use the same stuff. Yeah, so we need sponsors and we need people to speak and take care of the kids. And bring your kids. Bring your wife, bring your mother, bring your kids. Inclusion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Looking forward to all that. So without further ado, Christian, I'll just cut your introduction really short here. This is Christian Lechner from Msg Systems. He's a repeat offender here, coming back every year to give us his insights. And today he's going to talk about extensions in the age of S/4HANA. So thank you, Christian.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. So we already heard today a lot about implementing things within S4 using BOP, using the S4 programming model. We heard something about BRF Plus, do's and don'ts. We heard something about integration issues when we go along. So now with S4, the way how to extend the applications, the way how to build add-ons, we can even go farther and make modifications, which usually then make fun when you do an upgrade. So that's something that's status quo. It's up to you how clever you build your extensions as partner or customer, and the consequences are then coming at hand, latest at the next upgrade. Now some things have changed due to the strategy of SAP. So it's cloud first. I think we heard that today also several times. So cloud is very important for SAP, very important for their product. And that's why two things happened. So with S4, we do not only have the solution available on-premise, but we also have a public cloud offering. And in addition, we have the SAP Cloud Platform, which somehow complements the offering. And along with these points, we get to a new way how we can extend. So we get more options how we can extend our solutions. We get more choice, which also leads to different consequences that come along. So this is a complete overview what type of extensions are available. We have here on the left-hand side the S/4HANA system. Again, our typical layered structure. And we have different types. We have classic extensions. We can have so-called in-app extensions. That's new. And with the sub-cloud platform, we have another way to extend our applications, not coupled to the S4 system in a close way, like depicted here, but really loosely coupled, making integration on different levels using different interfaces. I will now go through each and every way how to extend it, and also lose a few words what I think, what from my experience are the consequences, are the pros and cons, something like that. So first of all, let's take a look at the classic extensions. That's easy. That's the same as we always did. So we can extend S4 which in each and every layer, it's still ABAP, and we can extend it using bodies, using the extension mechanisms. Maybe we have to adopt our skill set a bit, because there are these new CDS views that are extended differently than we usually have it. But at the end of the day, it's business as usual. You can do whatever you want. Nevertheless, be aware that this is only available on-premise. So this extension mechanism can only be done on-premise. And there are some consequences. So in general, when you do this way of extending your application, of building your add-ons on top on S4, it's not transferable to the S4 HANA Cloud. So there is no real migration path when you have modified your system in the worst case, or if you have some freestyle extensions or some add-ons as a partner or a customer that are built on top of S4. From my perspective, there is the risk to run into kind of old habits. So you build your applications, you build your add-ons, and they are very strongly coupled to the S4 system. I mean, there is no limit how to do it, so you can do it whatever you like, and you can also run into modifications. So if you think that classical extensibility is the way that you want to do, I would recommend to stick to the S4 programming model as far as that's possible, especially when you build as a customer or a partner add-ons on top of S4. And, which is some kind of a soft requirement, because the system does not enforce you to do so, care about interfaces and APIs. So try to check if these APIs that you use, BAPIs whatsoever, are kind of whitelisted, so that you have this loose coupling effect, and you do not integrate with interfaces that might change or might not be available at a later point in time. But that's so the same story as we already had. The new story is the in-app extensibility, and that's already depicted here. It's a new kind of extensibility within the S4 application that has its origin in the cloud deployment, but is also available on-premise. So you can also use it on-premise. What's there behind this extensibility? Well, it's also extending the S4 HANA system, the ABAP system, but in a very directed way. So SAP says that there are some use cases, some stories that you can follow along in order to make your extensions. One thing is, for example, building custom user interfaces, enhancing user interfaces, like classically hiding fields, adding custom fields, changing the grouping, and so on and so forth. And this is a generative approach. So if you add fields, all the layers that we had before from Martin, from OData down to the CDS view will be generated. So you add the field and you get this generated. You can add custom fields to your data dictionary tables. You also can add, and that's depicted here, kind of a little bit less coupled to the core, add custom business objects to your logic. And for sure, you can also put in some custom business logic. Peter mentioned that this morning. That's ABAP, but it's restricted. And this is also now quite usable, because it's now a little bit coupled to the interface extensibility. So you have within your system Fiori apps in order to find out about the extensibility, add fields, and so on. And then you can you get kind of proposed bodies, for example, that you can use in order to put in your business logic. Because usually when you add a field on the UI, you have very specific points within the process where you want to validate, where you want to add custom business logic, and that's then here. What's also possible is to add custom analytics, custom reports, for sure with a nice Fiori UI. And that's not only available on-prem, but that's also available in the cloud system. So if you go down that path, that's something that's transferable between two worlds. It's not for free. There is no, as far as I know, no migration path. But at least the investment that you did is available in the cloud. So from my point of view, this is really a big chance, especially when it comes to the classical RISEF or implementation tasks that are done, for example, by SAP Consulting or by functional consultants. As I said, a transfer to the S/4HANA Cloud is possible. And from my experience with customers, restrictions can be a good thing. Because here you can really focus on this type of implementation and do not build up superfluous requirements, super fancy stuff that nobody uses, that's built up over years and that make a system extremely complex. The tooling is available, it's Fiori-based, it's web-based, and it's constantly improving. So with 16.10 it was really not so cool because you could enhance your UI and then you could, if you're lucky, find the right bodies if you knew them. This is now improved, as I said, but there are still some more steps to do in order to make it really a convenient tooling and to make this these implementations really easy to go. What from my point of view is a risk, not from a technological perspective, but how it is used is that you might abuse this mechanism in order to build again add-ons, especially these custom business objects that are buildable and then can be associated to the standard business objects. This is, from my point of view, an option that you can abuse this mechanism and get back to very closely coupled solutions that are then no longer really transferable in a good way to the cloud. This is now, so the in-app extensibility as well as the classical extensibility is something that is within your S4 system. So the typical use case is that you have extensions that you want to integrate with the S4 core system. With the SAP Cloud Platform, there is now a new way to extend your system, and that is the preferred way how to extend your system, especially when it comes to bigger add-ons, to partner products, to really making cloud-native applications, and that's SAP Cloud Platform. So the SAP Cloud Platform, especially Cloud Foundry, allows you to build full cloud-native applications, as depicted here. So you have all the persistency mechanisms, you have the runtimes, Java, JavaScript with Cloud Foundry, the build packs that are available. Be a bit careful, there are some that have enterprise support by SAP, there are some that don't. And you have your UI, for example, Fiori. And the intention is, as we talk about extensions, not to only to build standalone applications, you can do that, for sure, but to extend the S4 core, so to get not to build something that is redundant. And for that, we have different integration points that are available. For example, you can integrate on the UI level, extending Fiori apps. What's more interesting is the middle layer, the business logic layer. So you can extend your S4 system, be it on-prem or be it in the cloud, using the whitelisted APIs that I mentioned before. Or what is planned to come, to react on business events. So think about the ABAP system raising an event that you consume within the cloud and react on that. Or the other way around. You raise an event within the cloud and the ABAP system reacts on that. So that's not currently available. APIs, they are available. I will say something about that. And last but not least, you can also integrate on a database level, so you can do data replication. Not my favorite integration pattern, but it's possible. What's really cool about SAP Cloud Platform, Cloud Foundry, is this little thing here that's depicted here, the so-called SAP S/4HANA Cloud SDK. And this Cloud SDK is now generally available, I think, since Tech at Las Vegas. It was before in a beta phase for I think roughly a year. Partners could jump on at Sapphire this beginning of this year. And that really enables your development. So with this Cloud SDK, you get support from the start of your extension project. You get project templates, for example, Maven archetypes that are available on Maven Central that help you to build your project. And this is then consequences when it comes to the dev pipeline. You get support in order to integrate with S4 because, I mean, it's, what I forgot to say, it's Java. It's not ABAP. Sorry for the guys who went to the ABAP on the CP session. It's Java. And if you think about, I have to integrate with the S4 system. I have my data dictionary on S4. I do not have this data dictionary in Java. But this Cloud SDK provides you with a kind of a virtual data model so that you do not have to think about the data types. You get a type ahead support and get the BAPIs that are available, the OData services that are available, all the whitelisted APIs, and you also get the data types. So that's really a support. Then it's for sure built for resilience, so it's really built for cloud-native applications. Different story than the ABAP stuff. It's using open source software. For example, it's leveraging Netflix Historics for circuit breakers and bulkheads. And it's enhancing Historics, for example, with the aspect of multi-tenancy. So this is really then an aspect that helps you to build this so-called enterprise-grade applications. What it also helps you when it comes to testing is mocking the S/4HANA dependencies. That's also something that comes there out of the box. And what's really, really good and really helpful when you start with that, it delivers pipeline as code. So now in the general available version, Docker images that you can fetch from Docker Hub, run them, attach it to your repository, so Gox, Git, GitHub, whatsoever. And then you have a predefined pipeline that allows you to do this thing called continuous integration. This pipeline is also built from standard tools like Jenkins. It is supported or kind of related to your project structure. So it's testing according to your project structure. It expects some tests at some specific positions, at some specific folders. It's executing that, and it also puts in some quality checks that are kind of SAP specific. So for example, when you think about connecting to S4HANA, it's still ABAP. It's not really cloud native, I would say. So this is kind of a bottleneck. And this quality checks, for example, make sure that all the calls to S4HANA are wrapped within an Historics action, so that you have your circuit breakers in place, because this is typically a bottleneck. And there are a lot of more things that are available here. I pasted a link here for the landing page at the developer area, where you can get more information and can try it out. So that's really something that helps you a lot, and that's really a new, very, very interesting way, especially when you build really add-ons. I'm not talking about adding a field here, putting some custom validation logic there. I'm talking about real add-ons. I'm talking also about kind of industry solutions. So from our not too extensive experience, the tip is really to adhere to cloud native development, to cloud native Java development. It's, as we heard today already, a different story than classical ABAP development. It's a completely different story, completely different ecosystem. Currently, as I said before, the Cloud SDK is available for Java. Java is the first-class citizen. Sorry for the Node.js guys. This is only available for Java. We also use or make heavy use of the Spring ecosystem in order to get rid of even more heavy lifting. That's also an ecosystem that you should take a look at. So if you want to get some more information about what's happening outside the ABAP world, go to Java, Spring Boot, Cloud Native. It's really cool there. And use the S4HANA Cloud SDK. Especially if you integrate with S4, it can also help you with standalone cloud native applications. That's also possible. But the real big benefits come with the integration of S4. I think I'm repeating myself a bit, but cloud native is not ABAP development. Absolutely not. And as I said, there is still a connection to a kind of non-cloud native application with S4, where you have some helpers within S/4HANA Cloud that make sure that you do not break your application. Now, before TechEd, my talk would have ended here. Now with TechEd, there are some new kids on the block when it comes to side-by-side extensibility. Beside the Death Star or whatever this looks like of S/4HANA Cloud and the in-app extensibility, there is the side-by-side extensibility that is now also, at least in a private beta phase, ABAP. So we have an ABAP build pack within the SAP Cloud Platform. My personal opinion, but that's my opinion. In general, there is quite. I wasn't a part of the open space, I have to admit, but there was quite some rumble on Twitter. There was quite some rumble on SAP community concerning: is it good? Is it bad? So I think that the first thing when it comes to that topic, put the emotions aside. It's within the SAP Cloud Platform. It's available and it will probably be used. And I think there are some valid use cases where you can use that. Nevertheless, ABAP is not cloud native. It's still ABAP, and it has some restrictions. So there was also a talk at the annual meeting of the German-speaking user group in Bremen, where this was a little bit more clearly elaborated. It's not that you have an S4 system within the cloud. It's a HANA database with a naked SAP NetWeaver on top. So you have sub ABA. So there are probably, as we heard, there are 2-3 managers in here. So managers have kind of lower dimensional thinking, probably. And when they, I never said that, and that's not so. No words about my company. They might think, hey, ABAP is in the cloud, cool. We can take our old solutions and put them into the cloud, copy paste, cool, that's it. No, that's not the case. So this kind of ABAP will adhere to the S4 programming model, so you have to rework the stuff, definitely. So no copy paste. I did not yet get something from my managers concerning that topic, and that's not because there are the most clever managers. They did not yet realize that, I guess. There are some other open questions, like it's not publicly available yet. Most interesting point from my point of view, if you have ever worked with SAP Cloud Platform and tried to onboard customers or yourself, pricing is not available yet. And that's not a Java runtime that we're talking about. That's something big. So a lot of open questions remain, and I think one has to watch it. One has to see how this evolves. There is another thing that was brought up at the news.sap.com page, where there was some Twitter exchange, short Twitter exchange between Gregor and some guy from Capgemini, concerning a kind of a variant of this side-by-side extensibility. So when you think about S4 systems, you have a HANA underneath. I guess that's why it's called S4 HANA. And within this HANA, at least with 1709, it's based on HANA 2.0 SPS 2. And you have a solid XS Advanced runtime in there. XS Advanced is kind of an implementation instantiation of Cloud Foundry. So why not tap into this world of side-by-side extensibility using XSA within the SAP HANA system? And that's what was proposed here within this article on news.sap.com. So using the XSA runtime of your HANA system as a kind of side-by-side approach-like thingy with your S4 system. So I mean, that's kind of a logical approach. I also got this request from customers concerning if this makes sense, if we should do that using this side-by-side extensibility. I mean, it's logical not only from the perspective that it's also Cloud Foundry. You can really transfer it using the multi-target applications. So if you build it within the XSA, you have the option to deploy it to Cloud Foundry. and get some kind of cloudish experience on-prem because you can build microservices. From my point of view, there are some downsides. So you're running perhaps into wrong integration patterns because you are not restricted to APIs. You can do integration on really table level with cross-schema access. I don't think if that's cool. Then you are within HANA. Within Cloud Foundry, you have, or within SAP Cloud Platform, you have different persistence services. You have MongoDB, you have PostgreSQL, you have HANA. So you have really the freedom of choice to take what is useful. Here you have SAP HANA is only a persistence, so you have to think about, do I enforce my developers to only use kind of database agnostic accesses, or do I make use of SAP HANA native objects like calculation views, which in consequence then also have to be available within the cloud platform, which means you have to pay for the HANA persistence. What's also important, the HANA system is not in the cloud. It's not horizontally scalable like hell, depending on your hardware provider. So there is something that you have to think about concerning scaling, concerning sizing, because you have the S4 system that sits on top of HANA that pushes load on it, and you have your application that's running within HANA that also puts load on it. So it's just something that you have to think about, not to forget it. So that are now the new options concerning extensibility. Now, if you take a look at the picture, it's not complete yet, because now you have different systems. You might even have combinations of in-app extensions and side-by-side extensibility. And usually business processes don't care about system boundaries, so you somehow have to integrate the stuff. So especially when it comes from a business perspective, workflow and business rules are important. And with business rules, there's some very interesting notion that's going on at SAP. For those who do not know me, I'm quite addicted to BRF+. That's why I quite like to watch what's happening in the business rule world. And there is something going on. There is a business rule service on SAP Cloud Platform, and recently a roadmap was released that's available that showed this little picture. And this little picture at the end of the day says, hey, I have one central business rule repository, and I have the option as a runtime to have it here. I do all my modeling, all my design time here within the SAP Cloud Platform, and then I do a deployment wherever I want it. So I have here local runtimes, for example in Hybris, SuccessFactors, IoT, whatsoever, or even in the SAP Cloud system. I can even have a local repository here that I can replicate. And this is the way the strategy is heading. So removing or kind of dragging out the distributed business rule stuff that is available within the SAP ecosystem and putting in the things up into the SAP Cloud Platform. This already has some consequences for those of you who use the HANA Rules Framework, HRF. Is anybody using HRF? Yeah, it would have been a surprise, honestly. HRF is based on XS Classic, and this is kind of deprecated. And this is the first thing that will move up here. To be exact, not the XS Classic implementation will move up there, but a new implementation that is then deployed to XS Advanced, as anyway XS Classic is deprecated. What is also coming is that the BRF Plus stuff will also be migrated, or could be migrated up to the SAP Cloud Platform. All the BRF Plus stuff? No. Within the roadmap, there is a link to an SAP node where they clearly state what objects can be transferred to the cloud and what objects cannot be transferred to the cloud. So whenever you start a BRF Plus project now, besides the do's and don'ts that Peter mentioned, and besides an extraordinary cool book that some very experienced guys wrote about BRF Plus, was an insider. You also should have a look at this node, in order not to use an expression that is not supported anymore. What's interesting is this central design time is really kind of re-implemented using a standard called Sub-Enterprise Rules Model, and this is based on an open standard. So you have then one design time that is unified and can then deploy it, for example, to Java, BRM, to ABAP, BRF+, or to HANA. So in general, that's quite a nice notion. So we have an overall harmonization over ABAP, Java, HANA, all those stacks, all those solutions. What's really cool is it's sticking to open standards. This is the open standard, it's decision modeling notation. You can look that up, you can take a look at the specification, especially if you have problems falling asleep. This one is really super boring. And what is important, if you take a look at the business rule service at the moment, it has features. BRF Plus is really super powerful when it comes to rule modeling. So when you have an ABAP project, stick to BRF Plus. Make sure that you only use the expressions or the artifacts that are supported, and then your way to the cloud is open. As I said, there is a long way to go until this business rule service is really capable of the things that BRF Plus is able. Maybe I'm biased there, but I don't think so. And really take care about current restrictions. So especially this HRF thing that might be running somewhere under the hood. There is some things going on. But nevertheless, that's a notion that you should take into account in general when you now make a move, when you now make some move forward using new functionality. Take or think one step further, because this harmonization will not be restricted to rules. Okay, some last words. Whatever extension option that you choose, you really have to think about, you really have to take into account several options, and technology is not the only one. There might also be organizational constraints. That's something what might make ABAP on SCP quite sexy for some companies. Choose the right approach for your problem, not the right approach from a technology perspective, because you want to do something that's cool. And it's not an either or. So there will be solutions, and that will make, when it comes to the integration of S4, a lot of solutions that will combine, for example, in-app extensibility and the side-by-side extensibility, because maybe the application is not raising the event that you want to consume within your side-by-side extension. Then be aware of the midterm consequences, especially when it comes to these sub-cloud platform services, because the intention is cloud first, harmonization within the cloud. If you go for ABAP, go for the S4 programming model, really use it. And if you go for cloud native, go for the Java runtime, because this is the one that's currently supported within the S4 HANA Cloud SDK. Anyway, my very personal opinion, no matter which way you choose, you are on the safe way when you use Java with Spring. So that's kind of the best approach from my perspective. Okay, that's it from my side. I thank you for your attention. Before somebody jumps on the stage, I will put this talk on SlideShare, and there are some more slides with all the links. So I don't know how you deal with SAP community. I do not really find things the way I found them in the past, so there are a lot of links to all these different topics that I talked about. Okay, again, thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. So, vielen Dank, Christian. Danke. So, we have our last farewell yoga asana from Brigitte for today. After that, we'll have a short break, and we'll come back for, just a 5-minute break. So please go ahead and take part in this, and and we'll also say goodbye to Brigitte, and vielen Dank.
Bye.
Did you want to repeat it?
Yeah. If you like to write an email, I will send you the exercises we did today. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you very much. So 5-minute break, and then we'll meet back here.